Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming or Battlefield-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that can be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a YouTube message. So, the first question for today comes from a lot of you, and it mainly came in the form of, what did I think of the new Call of Duty trailer? So, I was pretty impressed by the trailer. From a spectacle standpoint, it was very impressive. The graphics look like they've finally been upgraded. They have a brand new engine, and the fact that they have some big name actors like Troy Baker, who was the voice actor from Joel in The Last of Us, and Booker in BioShock, and also Kevin Spacey, who looks to be the villain, that's piqued my interest. Like, when I saw Kevin Spacey, I got a little excited, like I will admit. And then as for the gameplay, it seems like they're going down more of a non-linear path, at least for the level design. They mentioned that after every single mission, you can upgrade your exosuit, and one of those upgrades allows you to climb walls. And if you have the ability to climb walls, having a corridor shooter isn't really going to be possible at that point. Like, if you're able to basically maneuver pretty much anywhere on the map with this exosuit, you're going to have a lot larger maps, or at least that's what I'm picturing in my mind. And so from that standpoint as well, that makes me also a little bit interested. And so from the single player standpoint, which is basically all we've seen from the trailer, admittedly, I'm pretty excited to see what comes of it. I want to learn a little bit more because this is Call of Duty, and I have gotten shafted in the past, but so far it looks pretty cool. But as for the multiplayer, we haven't heard a whole lot about what it's going to entail. If it's the same standard, we're going to have 6 versus 6, it's going to be a very small map, there isn't going to be any destruction, it's going to be very enclosed, then I'm not really sure how thrilled I'm going to be about that type of experience. Like, I know that one of the pitfalls of the Call of Duty franchise is that what they do very well, and people come to basically expect that type of gameplay from the Call of Duty franchise, and since that's the case, they haven't deviated much from it. They change things slightly here and there, but because they know they can sell millions of copies of basically what they've been shoveling out every single year, that's exactly what they're going to produce. And so what I would like them to do is push the envelope a little bit, maybe add some more dynamic destruction into their game, and not what they had in Ghost. Admittedly, I never played Ghost, but at least from what I saw from the trailers and what I saw from them trying to promote the game, it wasn't very impressive. Being able to blow up one wall on one map isn't what I would really consider dynamic destruction, or really isn't going to influence the way that the match progresses. And the fact that they're on a new engine, maybe that's exactly what they're trying to recreate in their game. So that could be one way that they're trying to redesign or impact Call of Duty. The other thing I would like to see is have some larger expansive maps. Maybe have us go 20 versus 20 or 15 versus 15 on much larger arenas. Still have the smaller arenas that the Call of Duty franchise is known for, because they still need to sell copies, but I would love it if they pushed the envelope and made it so that we did have some much larger expansive gameplay. I'm not expecting like 32 versus 32 for like something like Battlefield. I would not expect that, but to have some larger maps with larger player counts, that would be awesome for me. And so while the single player is looking very impressive, I love the cast, I like the direction they're taking, what it seems to be with their map design, we don't know too much about the multiplayer, and so we're really just going to have to wait and see what they're all going to be coming up with. The next question comes from Philip, and it is, do you think that the TV missile should have a proximity fuse or a airburst function? I find it annoying that sometimes I use a TV missile and I miss a chopper by a mere foot or less. I'm suggesting a fuse that if you get the missile within a foot or two of the vehicle only, that the missile would explode and damage the vehicle. Or if you could trigger the missile to explode by exiting the missile at the perfect time and the missile would explode in midair like a airburst. This has been something that I have heard tossed around the interwebs. I've gotten this question every once in a while. The problem I have with it, though, is that this would essentially make the TV missile easy mode when you're going for helicopters. Like, the thing about the TV missile is that it's supposed to be hard to hit targets with it. It's supposed to be a very skillful weapon because it also does a ridiculous amount of damage. It doesn't do as much damage as it did back in Battlefield 3, admittedly. If you hit someone with that and it was basically a helicopter, the helicopter was taken out in one shot. Like, it was a high risk, high reward type of system. And so maybe if they made it so that it did 20 to 30% damage if you use the airburst function of the TV missile, then I guess I could see this being all right. But you have to remember that there would literally be no way for the pilot to avoid this damage, and not being able to avoid damage sucks. Like, getting it close to a helicopter is easy. Like, that's the easy part, but trying to make it so that it hits the helicopter, that's where you run into problems, and that's where the skillful aspect of it. And if you think about it, like, the TV missile isn't even meant for aerial combat. It's meant for taking out tanks down on the ground, slow-moving targets that have a hard time avoiding your damage and that are an easy thing to line up. That's what the TV missile is all about. And sure, if you get good, you can take out aerial targets. Like, if you're a very skillful player and you can line it up, then it's a very effective way at taking out helicopters, but that's not its main function. And if you made it so that it had an airburst to it, you start to run into the problem where you're deviating away from the main role of the TV missile. Like, it is really solely meant for taking out stuff down on the ground, and mainly tanks. And if all of this wasn't enough, you also have to remember that this would essentially turn into the mobile anti-air active rocket, but something that you can guide towards your enemies. So it doesn't even matter if you're lined up at the beginning. Like, you just get it close to your target and it's going to explode. No one right now really enjoys the active radar missiles in Battlefield 4 because it feels cheap when you're on the receiving end of it. It's not very hard for the mobile anti-air to line these things up, and because it doesn't notify the player that they're being locked on by the active radar, or they don't know that these missiles are on the way, if they react too soon or they don't see it, their countermeasures aren't going to mean anything. Like, there's a very sneaky missile. And so now just think of the ability of the thing to be guided by someone. So if you are in the TV missile position, you guide this towards your enemy, it explodes, they have no way of avoiding it, they can't even ECM or flare to avoid the damage because you're the one guiding it, and it explodes, it does a lot of damage, and they're now a massive fireball. So all in all, it's cool in concept, I like where your head is going, but I just don't see this being something that we would want for the TV missile. The next question is, what do you think about DICE adding back extended mags into Battlefield 4, but not the way that they used to be? The new extended mags would take 20% longer to reload, will add 50% more ammunition to each magazine, will decrease the movement speed of the player by 10%, and are not available to LMGs or weapons that have over 50 rounds in the mag by default. This is one of the best suggestions that I've heard for adding in extended mags. Like, it's got the whole risk-reward type of system. You have to weigh the positive and negatives of it, and I could see this being something that they probably won't add into Battlefield 4, but potentially in a future Battlefield title. What I like about it is that it would give you more options on how you want to play with your soldier. Like, if you're someone who is very accurate and you know that you're going to be able to take advantage of more rounds in your magazine, then this would be a great accessory for you. This would be a great customization option because you're going to be able to take the full advantage of it. But if you're someone who isn't very accurate, or actually even if you aren't very accurate, this could also be awesome. But if you're someone who has a hard time managing your reload times or managing when to reload, or if you're like me who reloads after every kill, this probably wouldn't be the best attachment for you. You would have a much longer reload time, you would be in situations where you'd be a lot more vulnerable, and so personally, I think that this would be a great addition in the game. It would allow players to customize to their playstyle a little bit more. If you did have extended mags, it wouldn't just give you a blatant upgrade like some of the other attachments in the game. You would have to think about how you're using that attachment and how it's going to impact your gameplay. And so yeah, I think this is a solid idea, and while I wouldn't expect it in Battlefield 4, I think this is a great suggestion for an upcoming Battlefield title. The next question comes from Adam, and it is, with Titanfall adding AI into their game, what do you think if DICE added it into Battlefield 4? I think this will give commanders a chance to control them and bring a more immersive game. This is a question I was never expecting to hear from Battlefield, because while I get where you're coming from, like the AI in Titanfall I thought was very well done. It did make the maps feel more alive. It felt like you were a part of a larger scale battle, but you have to remember that in the Battlefield franchise, you already have that very immersive, expansive gameplay. Like, you got 32 versus 32. There are a ridiculous amount of things going on. You have tanks down on the ground, you have people up in the sky in helicopters, jets are zipping around everywhere, people are capturing objectives as infantry units. Like, this feels like a war game. Like, this is probably the closest that we've gotten in recent memory to having all-out war, except for maybe like PlanetSide 2. It probably does it a little bit better. But you get where I'm going with it. And so while I think in Titanfall, Titanfall, the AI works very well. I think that, like, it's perfect for that game. I don't think that people would be very thrilled, or even if it would, I don't even think it would work in the Battlefield franchise. And it simply comes down to the fact that we are the soldiers. We are the army, and that's what makes the Battlefield franchise so great. But that is about it for today's Sunday Mailbox, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, if you would like to submit your own questions that can be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below or by sending me a YouTube message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.